Hey there, I'm the Tangwar teacher. I would like to welcome you to our class on Middle Earth languages. Tonight we're going to continue our study in Middle Earth as we discover ancient Quenya. We'll be talking about how the elves traveled across Middle Earth towards Valinor and their adventures, and then we'll see how the languages that Tolkien invented and created for them, how they work with those different groups of elves. So grab a notepad and a pen and join me back here in a few moments. See you soon. Good evening, everybody. How's it going? Hey, I'm the Tangwar teacher. It's nice to see you guys. How are you guys doing? How long will the class be? Well, normally we go for about an hour, and then I usually do name requests, that kind of stuff. So, but most importantly, if you are here watching it live, I will be posting this up onto my YouTube, so you can go check that out later. So no worries, go check it out later. Pop in and out as you need to, and you can catch up later. So last week we talked a little bit about just getting our feet wet, so to speak, into Middle Earth languages, and talked a little bit about primitive Elvish. But this week we're going to actually go further into talking about like the Silmarillion and the coming of the elves, and get more involved in the actual language construction and what it has to do with the elves. Before we get into all that stuff, though, how are you guys doing? Just want to say hello to the people that are here live. Thank you for being here. Doing pretty good. Just really excited. Got a lot of exciting energy about this show that I do on Wednesday nights. I spend a good amount of time preparing for it, and I think you'll see that tonight. So we'll get started here in a moment. Before we do, though, I have to bring out my iPad. I try to practice this every week, and it's like maybe I get a little bit better. Yeah, there we go. So, good old iPad, trusty iPad. So, we're going to talk a little bit about what we, like a little bit of a recap from last week. So, let me bring that up. All right. So, before we talk about the coming of the elves, just a little bit of a recap. Last week we talked about, yes, awesome wizard hands, yes. Last week we talked about how at Lake Kuivi Inen, that's where the elves were placed, and that's where they woke up. Like that's literally what it means, water of awakening. So we talked a little bit about that, and then we talked about how primitive Elvish was like just a spoken language. At first, there was no written form of it, and most of that was lost. Some of what we're going to be talking about tonight with ancient Quenya, that was actually lost as well. The only time it was kept was primarily through ancient songs. So now I've created a lot of slides because I've got a lot of information to go over. Let me just show you real quick a couple of things. So I don't claim to be an expert. I'm just a fan, just like you guys, and most of you have probably read the Silmarillion. If you haven't, then good luck. It is a very, very thick, dense reference book, but one of the best things that you'll ever encounter if you're interested in Tolkien. So anyway, so basically all I've done is I went back through the first part of the Silmarillion and checked out the part called The Coming of the Elves. And I took the information in those stories and the information, and I made them into a slideshow. And the reason why I did this is because in order to understand the languages and where they come from, you're going to need to understand more about the elves and their origin. because that helps to define the parameters that these languages fit in. Okay, so we'll come back to this in 1 second. Last week, let me pull up our tree. Last week we went over primitive Elvish. You can see that is the first one up under the Elvish language tree, and we talked about that. This week we're going to be talking about ancient Quenya, and then we'll go right from ancient Quenya tonight. We're going to go into Quenya and Vanyarin. Okay, so these are the two that would fall up under the Quenya umbrella, so to speak, or tree, I guess. And we'll talk a little bit about it. We'll talk about the origin of the elves, and we'll also give some examples of these. So we got a lot of stuff to talk about tonight, so let's get going. But you can see here, this is what we did last week, and this is the highlighted that's white here, what we're going to be doing tonight. And then we'll continue on next week on the Telerin. Just wanted to give you kind of an idea of where we are. All right, so back here. If you've read the Silmarillion, then great, you know. But it's even myself, I've read it several times, and I had to go back and go through this because I wanted to make sure I got all the facts straight. So that's awesome. You made a dance for it. That's so cool. Yeah. So we're going to talk a little bit about the Quenya tonight, as and how that plays a role in the elves. So let's get going. So first of all, in the coming of the elves, there was a war that broke out first, and the Quenya elves were in danger because of the shadow that was over Middle Earth, so to speak, and the Valar were really concerned about this shadow of Melkor that was really lingering over them, and they were fearful for the elves. So the Valar Orome returned to Middle Earth, and he abode with the elves. He stayed with them. That's really important to remember because it's going to take, it's going to be a key reference in a moment. So remember that he was the one that went to Middle Earth and stayed with the elves. I guess sort of like a protection. I don't know. Just keep in touch with them, maybe. I think he went there. Like I said, it was really a protection because after that, the Valar, they made war with Melkor on behalf of the elves. They actually went to war with them, and they fought. And the servants of Melkor fled to Utumnu. So during this time, the elves, the only time they actually saw anything to do with the Valar, it was mostly while they were fighting in war. So you can imagine that they would be like terrified, right? They would be scared to death of them. And that's actually going to sort of have an impact on them in a moment. The Valar set a guard over Cuivienen, which is the region where that lake was, where they awoke. And then they actually seized and bound Melkor. And they took him back to Valinor and put him on the Ring of Doom. And then they cast him into Mandos, which is like the prison. And which is, I have some thoughts about that. I'll share that later Monday. But I was just thinking when people join our Discord, they're put into the Hall of Mandos. And I was thinking, great. As soon as they join our Discord, we're putting them into prison. That's just what was running through my mind anyway. So I don't think about it that way. It's just when I read through this, I was like, well, that's kind of ironic. It's weird. But I may have to change that. But anyway, so once Melkor was out of the picture and basically in prison and not a threat anymore, the Valar had a council to decide what to do with the Quenya elves. And it wasn't really a unanimous decision. There was some of the Valar that had reservations about this, and even was like, after they had decided to invite and summon the elves to Valinor, some of them were like, oh, well, we're doomed now. I mean, and you know, like, if you've ever read it or know what's even happened just from watching the TV show recently, that's accurate, that bad things happened because the elves actually went to Valinor. That's not a good thing, right? A lot of bad stuff happened. I'm not going to spoil everything that happened, but we'll keep going. So the elves, they really dreaded the Valar. They didn't really trust them because all they saw them was during war, and they were like scared of them. So this is why I said that was key to remember that what Orome did. He was sent initially, and he had already built a relationship with these elves. So the Valar sent Orome back to them because they trusted him and they felt comfortable talking with him. I say him. I don't even know if Orome is represented as what. Uh, I think it kept saying he. So apologies if that's wrong. I'm not sure what they classified Orome as. And I put him there. So I don't know. Maybe I was reading it and I got that in my head. So we'll see. But Orome, he brought back 3 representatives from those elves back to Valinor, and they were Finwë, Ingwe, and Elwë. So they go back to Valinor and they sit and listen to this presentation basically given to them to say, hey, we want you to come to Valinor, experience all that we have here in the form of protection, and we want everything to be happy for you guys. So they, the 3 elves, the representatives, went back to all the Quenya elves and talked to them and said, hey, this is what they showed us. This is what they've offered us. Is anybody interested in following us to Valinor? So this became the first sundering of the elves, where they actually divided. And this is why it's important why we're bringing this up tonight, because initially they were all together. And because of this decision and the decision to march, to do the great journey, so to speak, to Valinor, which is why all of the elves, first of all, it divided them up into groups because of their leaders. And then there were some that didn't want to go at all. And then once this journey happened, it wasn't like overnight. This was like a migration that happened over a good while time, right? Okay, thank you for confirming that. I was just hoping that I had it right on my slide because I kept calling Orome a him, and I'm pretty sure the book says that. So I'm pretty sure I would have had it in my mind as a she if it had said so. Thank you for confirming that in the chat. Thank you so much. So next slide. All right, so now we're starting to get into things that look familiar. If you look at the highlighted words just right off, you're starting to notice, hey, that looks like some of the languages, right? Of these elves. It's starting to break apart, and that's why we're talking about it. So the ones that were willing to go and march on this great journey towards Valinor, to the west, they were called the Eldar. And it basically just means that they were willing, right? So the smallest group was led by Ingwe. They were the Vanyar. Now, once Ingwe made it to Valinor, he never came back to Middle-earth. Never. This leader stayed there. Even later on, some of the Vanyar went to like a war and did all sorts of other stuff, but he never went back. He stayed. They were the fair elves, and they had very minimal contact with Middle-earth and humans. The second group is the group led by Finwë, and this is where the Noldor come from, and they're like the wisest. At least they say they're the wisest. I think that's kind of the perception you get from them, that they're very knowledgeable, right? And they're referenced as the Deep Elves. The third group is the largest group, and that's why it says that this group is led by two leaders. It was so large that they had to actually split it up into 2 minor groups within this group, led mostly by Elwë, but also Olwë. And because they were last, because they kind of tarried behind and came later, a little bit later, that's why they were called the Teleri. And they're also sea elves, and I think that has more to do with because they liked the sea and they kind of stayed there. All right. Let's keep going. All right, so just remember these 3, the Vanyar, Noldor, and the Teleri. Now we're talking about the ones that stopped marching. These were the ones that left and went on this great journey and followed initially, but This first group, some of them were like they got lost along the way. Like I said, this is a migration. It's not like an overnight event. So some people lost their path. Some people turned away. Some people did all these other just natural things that would happen on a journey, right? Some didn't make it. But this group specifically was led away from the march. Like I guess Linway had like a way to bring them away. Yeah, some of them did get distracted for good reasons. I mean, the Middle Earth is not only pretty, there's also places to visit, possessions, lands. So a lot of these elves had desires. We're about to talk about that in a second, like the Averin. But let's finish up with Linway. He actually led this group away from the march, and they are the ones that eventually became your wood elves. Sort of like Galadriel. I think of Legolas. Basically, any of the Sindar wood elves that kind of influence. These were them. The Nandor. Actually, I don't know about that with Galadriel. She was a princess of the Noldor, but I know she eventually became the Lady of Lorien. So I'd have to look and see how that works. Maybe you guys, somebody in the chat, can help me out with that. I'm not. I mean, I'm looking right here. I'm looking at some information on her, and she was the child of a prince of Noldor, so she would have been one of the Noldor. But obviously I think she landed up in one of the, Wood Elves realms, right? I mean, it seems like Lothlorien would be, and maybe I'm wrong about that, I don't know. Somebody looking that up. Let me know what you find. We'll keep going. I'm gonna go ahead and look. I'm clicking on one thing. Just give me 1 second. It's definitely, Lothlorien is a woodland realm. The Galadrim elves. Trying to find the source of who. See, they spoke Sindarin during the Great Journey. That's how it was founded. Right. I'm not sure. She's Noldor with. Okay, so she. Well, that's. Alright, well, then that would place her in the Teleri here, on this slide here. I always feel like she's like, I mean, I guess that makes sense. You know, when I think about it now, that it would be Teleri. It wouldn't be, but it does say on the site I was looking at that she was of Noldor descent though. So I don't know. I'd have to do more research on that and look in the book itself and see what it says about her. But that doesn't change basically what we're talking about here. So this group was led astray, so to speak, from the march. They went southwards, the Nandoran, and they loved nature, the falls and the streams and trees and herbs, and they were wood elves. And the reason why this is important, though, is this is where the Sindarin language comes from, is this branch. Also, I think the Teleri as well. So we're going to get into that in that section in the Teleri. We're going to keep going. The Averin, this is the group where they were pretty much unwilling to leave at all. They didn't want to leave Middle Earth. They never wanted to march at all. So they never went. Now, I read this and I believe it. The Silmarillion speculates that these are the first orcs that may have been that Melkor captured and corrupted. Would be these. That's where they come from. All right, so just a little recap of what the groups are here, and these are the three groups: the Vanyar, Noldor, and the Teleri. They were the elves of the light, which that word in Elvish is Calaquendi. And obviously the ones that are in darkness, it doesn't mean that they're evil. That's not what that means. It just means that they didn't behold the light of the sun and the moon, and they were just elves of darkness, and the word for that is Moraquendi. They never went. They never saw that light. They preferred to stay in Middle Earth, pretty much. All right, let's get to actually some examples. So ancient Quenya, this is one of the words in ancient Quenya. Again, these mostly were lost in throughout time, and there was some few words that were preserved in ancient songs, and also a lot of the stuff that we have can be derived back. So checking this, let's see. Okay. All right, so let's write out this. This is Alamo, and it means listener, or a spy, or a scout. Let me make sure that you guys can see my hand and that you can read this. Let me see. Yeah, there we go. So we're going to do our consonant L there with an A on top. And then we'll do a consonant M like this. And then we'll do our bar beneath to make it 2 M's with an O on top. That's Lamo. Alright, so I wanted to show you this list. This list right here is the only surviving ancient Quenya words that we have. It's a very small list. You can see Lamo there in the middle, listener, spy, or scout. And if you want to take notice of these few, but when you go and look up like the Quenya and the Sindarin sections, there's like literally thousands of words and stuff that we have recorded and put together. So the fact that there's only like 8 of ancient Quenya, that gives you an idea that really nothing much was preserved. We have very little bit there, but it wasn't long after that the languages evolved, and that's where we started to get Quenya, and it's called Tarquesta. And this is where when you hear somebody refer to Quenya in our modern time now, that like if I'm learning Quenya or I want to learn how to speak Quenya or write Quenya, it's mostly reserved for ancient languages still, and lore and lyrics and things like that, but it would be Noldoran. Basically you're saying Noldoran Elvish or Noldoran Tarquesta. So an example of that would be Isilme Ilka Lasse, and that means in the moon gleaming. So I'm going to try to write this. I think I need to move my book here. Let me move that. I have so much stuff in my face here. I'm trying my best to get around. Let me move my microphone down a little bit. There we go. All right. Let's see. I'll make sure I have my notes, because some of these things are a little bit different than what I normally do. But so this is going to be an I. Let's see. Yeah, you can see that. Okay. We'll do a Silme Nakorna with an I on top. Now this is Quenya, so it's going to be a lot different than what you guys are probably used to seeing me write, because I normally write either Sindarin style or English or common mode. So this is the ISIL, and then we'll do an M like this with an E on top. That's the Isilme, and that means basically the moon part. Ilkalase will be the part about it gleaming. So let's write that out. That's the I, L. This Tangwa makes the K sound, and Quenya with an A on top. And then we'll just do Lasse. So we have the A on top of the L there. And then this is like a double S with an E on top. There we go. I'm glad you can see that. Kind of worried that things would get clipped or cut off. All right, so that's Isilme Ilka Lasse. It means in the moon gleaming. All right, let me clean this up. Pull my eraser, be faster. Yes. Yeah, you're asking if Tarquesta is the Quenyan word for Quenya. Yes. That's basically what they called it, yes. That's what the Elvish word for it. So let's go to another example. This is a very well-known one. Let's see. Where have I got that? Yep. All right. Trying to make sure I'm up under, because I've got a slide up there. Let's see. This is going to be Ellen Sila Lumen Omentielvo. And obviously that means a star shines on the hour of our meeting. So let's do that real quick. So we'll start off with our E like this. Yeah. Our L with an E on top, an N. And we'll do Silme like this. A long stem with an I. And then a L with an A on top. And then we're going to do lumen. So we have L, long carrier with a U, and then an M with an E on top, and two N's like this. And we're going to do the last word. Just give me a moment. Let's see if I can do this. Okay. So for this, we're going to do an O. Let's see if I can move this. Just give me 1 second, guys. Yeah, there we go. Move up. Thank you. Alright, so we're going to do our O like this, an M, then E on top. Then we'll do the tangwa that makes the T. Having to look around my microphone. With an I on top. Then we'll do our E, L, then a V with an O. Now this is, again, Quenya. There. Then what language is the word Quenya? Lestron. What language? That's a good question. Not exactly sure. Maybe I'd have to check that out and see. I know that they called the elves the Quindai, so I would have to. I don't know. I can look it up real quick just to be for sure. I don't want to speak. You're making me think tonight. So Tarquesta means high speech or high language. So I wouldn't necessarily say that it means Quenya, okay? To be more clear, more accurate. The word Quenya, see if I can, I've never actually looked that up, so this will be a first. Yeah. Okay, so the word Quenya actually means, according to eldamo.org that I'm looking at, it says it's Elvish, High Elven, Elf Latin, or speech. So it's basically the Elvish tongue, but I mean the Elvish, so I don't know. It sounds like one's referencing sort of just in general, this is Elvish. Another one is saying that this is more of a high speech or a high language, like representing the spoken form of Quenya. used by the Noldoran exiles. So yeah, I know that's kind of tricky. Um, so I hadn't really thought about that. It's a good question. All right, so let's clear this up. We got a couple more examples we're going to do. We're actually moving into a different section a little bit now. Let's see what I've got on my slides. Let me unhide them. There we go. So the next thing that I had, I had one more. So this one is Orinya Quete Nin. Orinya Quete Nin. It means my heart tells me. So let's write that one out real quick. Let's see, make sure I got my pen pulled up here. There, get rid of that. All right, so we'll start out with our, make sure I can go up a little bit more. Yeah. Do our O on a long stem like that. And then we're going to do our Roman like that with an E on top. Then we'll do an N. And then these dots in Quenya make the Y sound. Then we'll put our A on top. So that's Orinya. And then for Quete, or it may be Kete, because that's not a Qua. It might be. I'd have to check on that. But we got the K and the E, and then we have a T with an E on top. And then for Neen, it's just N, I, N. So there. So that means my heart tells me. I thought that would be a pretty good one. But when you go and look at the list for all the Quenya examples, you get like over 1,000 examples. So plenty of stuff out there to learn and do. So all right. So now let me clear this up so you can read that. All right, so I wanted to just talk about this. This would be more of an example of a dialect of Noldoran, and an example that we could give is how the word in Vanyarin is for yellow is toka. This language set or dialect is the closest that we would have to the actual Valaran or Valaran, however you say that, the language spoken by the Valar. So you can see here the word for yellow is tulka, but originally in Valaran, yellow actually would be tulukha, and then in the word golden haired, it would be, I'm guessing this is tulukhasta. So that is how you can see how those words come from that. And there's actually very few examples of that, but I picked one that you guys might be able to kind of see how it evolved from Valaran. All right, so that's actually all we've got in the form of what we were going to go back over tonight. So let me pull back up our tree, and we'll talk about what we're going to do next time. So just to recap, we went over and discussed ancient Quenya. We talked about the elves and their great journey from Lake Cuivienen, marching towards Valinor in the west. And we talked about how they broke up into the several different groups by their leaders. And we talked about how there's very little ancient Quenya left, but we had a few examples. And then Quenya, there's a lot of examples, and this is more of your Noldoran, and then there's the Vanyarin. So next week when we pick up, we're going to go and talk about the ancient Teleran and start diving into examples from that. And we'll talk about the Teleran and the Old Sindarin, and we'll start moving into the Sindarin language examples. So, all right. So that wraps up our teaching portion that we're going to do. And do you guys have any questions? Maybe we can look up something, or if you have a request maybe you want to put in to do like a name or a phrase, we could do that as well. So I'm about to take a moment just to get me a sip of my water here, and I will let you guys ask me in the chat if you want to. So let me hide this. Now we have this opened up here. Alright, so let's do a couple of names here just to get started. So I'm going to do some examples that will teach some of the things that I'll be working on soon with my YouTube videos. I'm going to be redoing my entire series and teaching from scratch again, but with all the revisions and stuff that makes it more accurate with what Tolkien did and represented, and try to be more thorough and have more examples and sort of professional lead-ins and transitions and stuff. Also have new riddles. I have like a whole list of riddles. If you guys have an example or a riddle you want to send to me, send it my way and it might make it into the videos. I've actually got quite a bit already gathered up, but I may switch it out with some that you guys recommend, so send them to me. So let's do a word like since, S-I-N-C-E. I want to show, this is a good example of how we use Silme at the beginning here. And then we would actually use Silme Nakorna because it's a soft C. Let me write this up here. So since, like this, has the S sound, and the C that's soft makes the S sound also, but we would use Silme Nakorna. So we're going to put an N above that with an I, and then we'll put our silent E at the bottom. That's actually how you would write since, like that. At least that's one way you could do it. But that's this is the only time that you should be doing Silme Nakorna, according to what we see attested for by Tolkien. And that's something I'm going to be changing and revising in my teaching. Alright, let me check the chat because I saw a note. Let's see. Right. Okay, so the Tarquesta is the specific dialect of Quenya spoken by the Noldor exiles. Yes, that's true. Yep. Alright, do you guys have any requests? Anything you want to see written? We're going to have the broadcast on for just a little bit longer. Alright. Let's do, last week we did Galadriel. Yes, let me break that down a little bit. So the question in the chat was asked, do you put the Quenya, in the Quenya you put the vowel on top of the consonant that follows it, and in Sindarin you put the vowel above the consonant that precedes it. So let's give a quick example or demonstration of that. So if I was to write, we'll just say apple. So I have my two P's right here, and we're going to put an A on top of it. It goes directly on top of the consonant. Correct. That would, I guess, not really that precedes it, but the one that's immediately that it's working with. It's kind of hard to explain. So then we have our L here, and the silent E is right there. Now if I was to write, let me look up. Oh, we did Galadriel last week. I wanted to do Finrod. Let's see. Well, Finrod is written out in Beleriand. So that's not actually going to work. Let me find a Quenya word. All right, let's do the word for potato. Potato, right? So this is the word for potato. All right, so this is an example of apple. And it's ironic a little bit because potatoes are actually usually called the apple of the earth. Yeah, potato. Boil them, mash them, stick them in a stew. All right, so we're going to do it. Let me move this. Move out of the way. All right, so now this is apple. Now to do potato, this brush makes it difficult to write sometimes. Potato, I have to go slow. There we go. Potato. Exactly. Yep. Apple of the earth. You got it. All right, so it's Camorva. Let me write that out. C-E-M-O-R-V-A. Okay. This is Quenya for potato. Now we're going to write that out in as an example. Let me turn this. There we go. Get it out of my way. All right, so for Camorva, we're going to write in Quenya the symbol that looks like this for the K, and then we'll do an E, and then an M. We're going to do our O on top. So you see now we're actually doing, we're leading with the consonant, right? And then we're pushing the vowel up. And then we're going to another consonant and then pushing the vowel up. So now we're going to do, we've got our M-O, so now we need an R. So we'll do this R here. And then we do our V. And our A is going to go last because it's sitting up here. So this actually reads this way. And then it goes over. And then it goes up. Then it goes over, up, up. Whereas this one up here on top, it goes down and over. Down and over. Does that make more sense now? Hopefully. A good example we gave apple and then potato. And Camorva actually literally means the Kim part is talking about the soil and the earth, and the Orva is the part for apple. So it literally means apple from the earth, just like in other languages like you pointed out how it's actually called that. So yep, that's a good example. And that's the difference right there between this is actually using English mode on top here, but Sindarin actually uses the same kind of concept where it goes top, down, and over. And Quenya always goes bottom on the consonant, up, then over. Bottom, up, over. Like that. So cool. All right. Well, we are coming up on an hour, so I'll probably go ahead and be wrapping up the show. We have a couple of things coming up next week. Again, on Wednesday night, we'll start in the Telerin section, and I will be working on all the new YouTube videos that I'll be pushing out before too long because I want to try to get them out starting this month. So I'm going to be putting some work into those this weekend probably and getting all that pushed. So hopefully I can get in some more live time. We've been doing that on TikTok. So just to recap, if you guys don't know, if you're watching this only on Twitch, just know that I have a TikTok with a teaching course on it, and as well as many other videos with like 400 names in a playlist that you can look through and see if your name's in it or if somebody that you know. I have a YouTube channel with 9 videos. It's a complete learning course, and that's actually what I'm talking about redoing. I'll be redoing that soon and putting that out there, and it'll be totally revised. I also have a Twitter. I started that this week, so if you want to follow me on there. I try to post things that come across my mind or images and things like that. I have an Instagram where I also publish and post, so pretty much on everything that you can imagine. So just go find me. It's all the same, Tangwar Teacher. And I guess that's it. So thank you guys for joining, and I really look forward to seeing you next time. And I hope you look forward to seeing the videos I'll be pushing out soon. So everybody have a good evening and take care of yourself. All right. Bye.